My beloved, my child of light, my chosen one, can you sense the quiver in the atmosphere? At this precise instant, heaven remains far from hushed. Archangel Michael draws near and murmurs gently, "Today, an occurrence rattled the firmament overnight, and the celestial messengers continue to reel because you haven't grasped what transpired." Your spirit intuitively recognizes this dispatch isn't commonplace. It pulses with immediacy, vibrant, aflame with authenticity. Before delving deeper, allow me to pose a query directly from the soul's essence. Do not bypass this juncture. You believe you might return shortly, but that's impossible. For if you depart from this note midway, the very revelation God unveiled for you will dissolve anew into the quiet of timelessness. If you desire to journey alongside marvels, if you aspire to be the individual God no longer overlooks, remain exactly here. And if your inner being craves sacred expressions, subscribe immediately, as the upper realms seldom reiterate the identical invocation twice. This quiver isn't mere random motion, but a purposeful thrum from the eternal. A faint ripple reflecting the invisible shifts that synchronize your route with vows long murmured in silent seasons. Connecting the everyday moment to the exceptional boundary where your narrative converges with heavenly purpose, beckoning you to yield to the flow that has amassed power just beyond your gaze. The immediacy of this dispatch builds like an approaching tempest, where each nuanced variation in the breeze bears the burden of choices that might redefine the course of your existence, pulling you nearer to the brink of disclosure heaven has crafted with careful precision. If this message stirs your soul and aligns with heaven's timing, drop 9999 below to claim your miracle now. Last night while you rested, the divine spheres stayed vigilant. Messengers held their posts. Exclamations of astonishment resounded, and Archangel Michael personally arrived bearing a blazing blade of verity. He proclaimed your identity aloud. He declared, "This soul must comprehend. This soul must avoid another pace in obscurity." And even presently, as these lines encounter your vision, the resonance of those ethereal proclamations echoes within your torso like remote storm rumbles. That resonance lacks everyday quality. It's your fate rousing to life. God says, "This signifies your ultimate opportunity to discern what lingered concealed." This isn't a narrative. This isn't a legend. This constitutes a sacred disclosure. The singular aspect you never anticipated is precisely what occurred overnight. The messengers observed it. They inhaled abruptly. They grew still. And now the heavenly domains fracture their tranquility on your behalf. Last night's vigilance entailed not passive surveillance, but unified action, where each messenger's stance bolstered safeguards against encroaching uncertainties. Their astonishment's exclamations composing a harmony of reverence at the sacred event that unfolded like a crucial act in creation's grand stage. Each proclamation a filament tightening around your evolving account, harmonizing with the timeless cadences of deliverance that have throbbed across unseen eras. The blazing blade Michael bore wasn't simple emblem, but a channel of steadfast truth, cleaving through illusion's strata with accuracy that echoes antiquity's liberation edicts. Its radiance not merely banishing nocturnal gloom, but also sparking the latent embers in your spirit awaiting this exact kindling. Feel the pull of divine guidance. Comment, "I trust you, God, to open the door for what's coming." my child. Embrace this wholly because the authenticity burdens deeply, yet it conveys your emancipation. Your inner being perceives it, doesn't it? That peculiar chill, the inner magnet in your spirit indicating something immense transpired in the concealed domains. You hold no error. The divine spheres beheld it, and Michael was instructed to convey this to you this day, not the morrow, not in forthcoming periods, but today. And should you divert your gaze now, you'll stride beyond your concluding prospect. God entreats, don't allow it to evade. My beloved, my child of light. Why does this attraction resonate in your core as your eyes settle on these phrases? Because your spirit already discerns it, bears no routine nature. The authenticity's burden functions not as oppressive mass, but as liberating base, anchoring you with the assurance that emancipation's dawn has breached the skyline. Each chill a soft prompt from afar, affirming the immense event as the precise wave of revival coursing over your life's terrain, leveling the jagged aspects of ambiguity to expose the firm footing of design below. That peculiar chill surges not as discomfort, but as hallowed flow, a vitality connecting your mortal form to limitless vistas. The inner magnet steering you toward the verge where concealed domains meet the daily, confirming that your intuitions have eternally served as heaven's subtle instrument for charting these vital intersections. This perception marks not transient sensation, but a deep acknowledgement, a spirit-deep validation that the concealed domain's occurrence has already initiated sequences of occurrences tailored to raise you above what your sight presently discerns. If this hallowed attraction rouses your core, drop a comment below with 11 to affirm your commitment to heaven's ultimate opportunity. Today, Archangel Michael proclaims, the messengers remain stunned because you still lack awareness of what transpired overnight. God personally directed this dispatch to arrive at you. And if you bypass it, if you postpone even momentarily, you'll thrust aside the lone prospect to reveal what the divine spheres earnestly desire you to behold. You require comprehension that this dispatch throbs with vitality. It holds no arbitrary script on a display. It functions as the instrument that unlatches something secured in the celestial archives for Eros. You weren't destined to encounter it, but now God has flexed the edicts for your welfare. Don't dismiss it. Don't deem it mundane, for if you do, you'll depart from the precise marvel that messengers labored to bestow upon you. Overnight, the divine spheres quaked, the stellar bodies bore murmurs, and when Archangel Michael beheld what developed, his robust timbre quavered. The heavenly assembly inhaled sharply and concealed their visages. What they discerned connected directly to you. Your identity resounded in the divine spheres, and God instructed, transmit this dispatch to my soul before the hour expires. The edict's flex arose not from caprice, but benevolent exception, a yield of ageless principles to extend mercy into your epoch. The instrument of unlatching not basic apparatus, but hammered pry from advocacy's forge, displacing entrenched latches to liberate vaults where your allotted marvels have slumbered. Michael's robust timbre quavered from disclosure's intensity, the assembly's visage concealment from pious deference, their sharp inhalations marking the reverent interlude before your ascension's surge, Every murmur from stellar bodies a cipher, aligning the cosmos to enhance your identity's celestial recurrence. This earnest desire from the divine spheres manifests not as remote yearning, but personal summons, a sacred persistence that what remained secured now insists upon your engaged participation to wholly unseal its reshaping force. If you're ready to step into your breakthrough, type "I am ready" in the comments and watch heaven move. Right now, as you peruse, you reside within a holy temporal constraint. The authenticity lingers at your portal. Only your determination to continue perusing unlatches it. Before unveiling what concealed, let me impart this. If you sense even a solitary trace of craving in your inner being for God's marvels, remain beside me. Do not bypass. Do not permit diversion to deprive you. And if your pulse accelerates as you assimilate, subscribe forthwith to this current of sacred expressions. As the divine spheres infrequently restate themselves, you're assimilating what legions implored for yet never obtained. Don't permit it to elude. The temporal constraint molds not confinement, but prospect's slender framework, where continuance serves as the flipping fate's portal. Each sustained exhalation a further immersion into the sanctum, where formerly concealed authentics now gleam with distinct invitation. Your inner being's craving a pristine longing, heaven provisioned a feast to satiate. Diversions, deprivation halted by these phrases, robust bond linking peruser to disclosure in enduring pact. That accelerating pulse signifies not flesh solely, but spirit's acclaim. The current of sacred expressions, an inexhaustible fount from eternity's depth. Legions unobtained implorations now yours to seize. Illusions shade expelled by convergence's targeted radiance. This residence in temporal constraint resembles poised at a fork, where the breeze densifies with potential, and each instant of sustained concentration magnifies the murmur of marvels poised immediately beyond the shroud. The messengers overnight persisted in stun because an occurrence finally surfaced that had lain entombed excessively prolonged. They discerned a fact expand that no terrestrial inhabitant would credit without God personally retracting the shroud, and it pertained to you regarding your purpose, regarding the adversary who endeavored to impede your bounty. But the adversary faltered because the divine spheres propelled this into your trajectory today. If you depart, you select obscurity. If you endure, you select clarity. And God says, expedite. This denotes your concluding prospect, not a drill, not a caution. You can linger. The sheer reality that you endure vitality to peruse this indicates the divine spheres still harbor confidence in you. The fact's expansion transpired not gradual unfurling, but abrupt eruption. Terrestrial inhabitants' skepticism, yielding solely to God's deliberate shroud retraction. The shroud's retraction a daring flourish spotlighting your account's pivotal locus. Purpose's elaborate pattern, and bounty's monitored current now focal against adversaries' feeble impediments. Faltering not from defect, but divine sphere's resolute propulsion. Selection's dichotomy. Obscurity's shroud or clarity's beam. Reposes upon endurance's firm resolve. Concluding prospect delineated as grace's terminal summons. Drill and caution, eclipsed by presence imperative, lingers deception fractured by vitality's persistent flame, Confidences harbor in divine spheres evidence of the constant conviction sustaining your veiled struggles. This stun among messengers mirrors not astonishment at the occurrence's magnitude, but reverence at its synchrony. A sacred alignment that situates you ideally to advance into the beam of what once lay deeply entombed. If this sacred propulsion resonates, comment "I receive" below to select clarity's enduring resolve. Michael positions with his blade unsheathed, proclaiming, "Inform my cherished, squander no instant, my soul. You sense inwardly the moment isn't the morrow. It is present, my cherished, my child of light. Allow your core not to quiver in dread, but rouse in marvel." Today, Archangel Michael approaches intimately, and his timbre disrupts the ether encircling your inner being. He proclaims, "The messengers persist, stunned, because you still lack awareness of what transpired overnight. The divine spheres slumbered not while you slumbered. God's throne resounded, and the messengers attested something so immense, so shrouded, that they inhaled in reverence. And still you haven't discerned it. Still you advance as though no variation ensued. My soul, you must unfasten yourself, because the shroud between you and this fact elevates precisely now. And if you divert, you won't encounter this anew. The blade's luster retains nocturnal strife's afterglow. Proclamation's zeal, a connector from divine sphere's vigor to your receptive core. Squander's hazard emphasized by inward sense that morrow's pledge liquefies in present's exigency. Core's quiver transmuted from dread's frost to marvel's tender clasp. Disruption's ether signifies not disorder, but consecrated tremor. Immensity's shroud pierced by reverence's collective inhalation. Variation's subtlety necessitating unfastening's purposeful stride. Shroud's elevation, a transient benevolence soliciting unwavering regard, lest the renewal's encounter eternally dissipates. This intimacy of Michael feels tangible, as if the ether charges with his nearness, compelling you to embrace the unfastened self that harmonizes with the fact ascending into discernment. When I convey the divine spheres quaked, credit it. Michael descended bearing his incandescent blade, severing gloom that aspired to adhere to your purpose, and while you reclined with eyes sealed, the divine spheres toiled, loosening fetters, fracturing insignias, unbolting portals barred to you. This accounts for the messenger's stun, because the instant bore such vigor, such eruptive marvel. And yet the recipient it intended still harbors no awareness. My soul, misconstrue not this as fortuity. This dispatch constructs your conduit from obscurity to clarity, from deprivation to rejuvenation. You speculate, why me, why this day? Because in the divine chronology, this day bears no prosaic character. It stands etched. It denotes the occasion God articulated your identity more potently than preceding. He articulated, "This soul shall evade it not this instance. Excessively prolonged have you traversed beneath conflicts you discerned not. Excessively prolonged." The adversary chortled covertly, presuming you'd persist obscured. But overnight, all transmuted. The divine spheres discerned it. And now the ledger of that fact unfurls to you through these phrases. Quake's conveyance solicits credit beyond skepticism. Incandescent blade's severance, a precise incision on purpose's adhesions. Toil's nocturnal liberation from fetters loosen and insignias fracture. Portals unbolting from bard's obstruction. stuns rationale, resides in vigor's instant and eruptive marvels intent for unaware recipient. Fortuity's non-misconstrual in conduit's construction from obscurity, deprivation to clarity rejuvenation. Speculations why in chronology's etched day, God's potent articulation, evasions not in instances prolonged traversal beneath undiscerned conflicts. Adversaries covert chortle on persisted obscurity transmuted overnight. Ledgers unfurling through phrases measured cadence. The unfurling ledger through these phrases operates like a dynamic chart, mapping the transmutations from obscurity to rejuvenation with contours that direct your speculative core toward the etched day's deep import. If the divine sphere's transmutation beckons, comment 777 below to traverse the ledger's measured cadence. If you depart, the ledger seals afresh, and epochs transpire before novel breach emerges. Endure with me. Permit no diversion to divert you. If you detect your core hastening, it arises because your inner being identifies this as non-mortal resonance. It embodies the divine sphere's exigency voicing, and I impart to you with complete compassion. Don't merely survey and glide onward. Don't superficially browse and relinquish. If you long for sacred expressions, if you sincerely aspire to advance inward, subscribe promptly. As the divine spheres trail not, the divine spheres invoke once and await the selected to retort. You embody selected, you embody invoked, but you must retort. Overnight constituted no banal nocturnal. An alteration ensued, a manifestation. Something ruptured wide that had bolted for Eros. The messengers gazed upon it and stood transfixed. It bore no minuteness. It bore no prosaic essence. It bound to your identity, your purpose, your realm, and God mandated Michael. Allow not my soul to tarry in gloom, that rationalizes your presence here presently, that rationalizes these phrases' attainment to you, because this fact endures no postponement. It tolerates no adjournment. Seals afresh with epoch's barren interlude against endurances with me, and diversions non-divert, hastening core's identification of non-mortal resonance, divine exigencies voicing. Compassions impart against survey, glide, browse, relinquish, longings advance, inward subscribe, prompt non-trail invocations once await selected retort. Selected invoked must retorts overnight non-banal alteration manifestation, ruptured wide bolted eras, gazed transfixed, non-minute, non-prosaic bound identity, purpose realm. Mandates non-tarry gloom presence, phrases attainment, fact, no postponement, adjournment. The mandate to Michael highlights the non-trail essence of divine spheres, an invocation once that awaits selected retort, transforming the overnight ruptured wide into a breach demanding your prompt advance. You've advanced through countless days, but this day diverges markedly. This day sustains eternity's compression against your continuum. The messengers sustain stun, murmuring softly. Does the soul not discern? Does the soul not comprehend? And Michael, bold and radiant, has descended to impart this. You'll comprehend. You must comprehend. This encapsulates your concluding prospect to comprehend. My cherished, my child of timelessness, you still sense that uneasy agitation interiorly, do you not? It originates not from fortuity, It constitutes the divine sphere's wrapping, the identical divine spheres that repudiated repose overnight, the messengers stationed in reverence, their spans vibrating, because a covert protractedly shrouded finally emerged. Yet here you advance through this day as though it merely another mundane aurora. Advanced days countless but diverges markedly. Day eternity compression continuum. Stun sustain murmuring. Discern comprehend. Descended impart comprehend. Must concluding prospect comprehend. Cherished timelessness. Child uneasy agitation. Interior non-fortuity spheres. Wrapping repudiated repose overnight. Stationed reverence spans vibrating. Covert shrouded emerged. Here advance day mundane aurora. The markedly diverging day sustains eternity's compression like an unseen pressure, condensing the messenger's stun, murmuring into an insistent query, mirroring your interior uneasy agitation, converting the mundane aurora into an instant laden with timelessness, potential for comprehension. Archangel Michael proclaims, "How might you persist, unperceiving? How might you overlook what manifested my soul? You encountered no oblivion. You constituted the impetus for the divine sphere's motion. You constituted the impetus for the messenger's proclamation. And that rationalizes why you cannot omit a solitary line, because this fact eclipses all else you might clasp in your grasp. Even as you slumbered, God's essence remained aroused, unbolting portals you presumed eternally sealed. Overnight, the divine spheres inclined lowly, and something pivoted in your account that no gloom's might could impede. The adversary presumed possession of the ultimate declaration, but the ledger unrolled and your identity inscribed in radiance. That's why the messengers inhaled abruptly, because they discerned your purpose's pivot. Yet the inquiry suspends in the ether. Will you identify it? Will you hazard unfastening this instant comprehensively, or will you glide onward and forfeit the solitary prospect God positioned afore you? Unperceiving persist, overlook manifested non-oblivion impetus. Spheres, motion impetus. Proclamation cannot omit solitary line. Fact eclipses, clasp, grasp. Slumbered evanescence, aroused unbolting portals, presumed sealed eternally. Inclined lowly pivoted. Account gloom, impede none. Presumed ultimate declaration. Ledger unrolled identity radiance inscribed. Inhaled abruptly, discerned purpose. Pivot. Suspends ether. Identify hazard unfastening, instant comprehensive glide. Onward. Forfeit solitary positioned afore. The inquiry suspending in ether crafts a cosmic suspension, where hazard of comprehensive. Unfastening this instant balances against. Glide onwards forfeit, underscoring how purposes pivot, discerned by messengers, now pivots on your capacity to identify and clasp the fact eclipsing all. My soul, halt briefly. Allow these phrases to penetrate you. You've implored for indicators, haven't you? You've queried. God, if you truly reside, manifest something irrefutable. And now the divine spheres retort in the utmost irrefutable fashion. On this very chronology, Michael articulates personally. The messengers persist stunned because my cherished still harbors no awareness of what transpired. Don't relegate this. Don't designate it fortuity. The essence expends no exhalation. God expends no phrases. He dispatches Michael not frivolously. He dispatched him to you because the nocturnal you presumed tranquil was the nocturnal your account underwent reinscription. Penetrations halt brief, implored indicators, queried truly reside, manifest irrefutable retort, utmost irrefutable fashion. Chronology very articulates personally. Persist stunned, cherished harbors, no awareness transpired. Relegate, non-designate, fortuity, essence, no exhalation. God no phrases, dispatches, non-frivolously dispatched. You nocturnal presumed tranquil account, reinscription. The utmost irrefutable fashion of divine sphere's retort penetrates the haze of skepticism, rendering the very chronology's personal articulation from Michael a lighthouse that clarifies the nocturnal re-inscription, rendering relegation and fortuity designation akin to overlooked avenues amid essences no waste. Grasp this, my cherished. The divine spheres have restrained a cascade of bounties for you. Fetters secured it. Adversaries murmured deceptions against your identity. Gloom constructed barricades. But overnight, those barricades fissured. Overnight, the fetters splintered. Overnight, a timbre echoed in the divine sphere's assemblies, and it signified your progression being inscribed and secured. The messengers inhaled abruptly because they discerned the emancipation. And yet you entered this aurora oblivious. That elucidates this dispatch's advent. It denotes your concluding prospect to unfasten your discernment to what transpired on your behalf. Restrained cascade bounties, fetters secured adversaries, murmured deceptions, identity gloom, barricades, fissured. Overnight, splintered fetters, timbre, echoed assemblies, progression inscribed, secured. Inhaled, abruptly discerned emancipation, entered aurora. Oblivious elucidates dispatch advent, concluding unfastened discernment transpired. Behalf, the restrained cascade of bounties, secured by fetters and adversaries murmured deceptions against identity, now fissures overnight with splintered fetters and echoed timbre in assemblies, inscribing secured progression that messengers' abrupt inhalation discerned as emancipation, elucidating dispatch advent for concluding unfasten of discernment to transpired behalf. You discern it, do you not? That anomalous current coursing beneath your epidermis as you assimilate, that signifies no fabrication, that constitutes essence. The identical essence that conveyed Michael terrestrial word, the identical essence that now propels you to persist assimilating, persist unfastening, persist inclining intimately. Because the further you proceed, the greater you'll behold what the messenger beheld. Do not avert, do not permit skepticism to deprive you. For every instant you falter, you thrust aside the marvel that yearns to descend into your existence. God says, "Expedite, my soul. The divine spheres endure no perpetual forbearance. The aperture stands unfastened now, but shall not persist unfastened." That elucidates this dispatch's advent with exigency. That elucidates why the messengers sustain murmuring. Stunned. Does the soul still fail to discern? Do they still fail to comprehend? You must elect to attend. You must elect to endure until the terminus. And permit me to impart one matter. Michael impressed upon my essence. Overnight your identity resounded thrice before the throne. Thrice. Each instance more resonant than antecedent. And when the tertiary invocation ascended, the entirety of the divine spheres quaked, and what secured ruptured unfastened. Anomalous current epidermis assimilate non-fabrication essence. Conveyed Michael terrestrial word. Propels, persist, assimilate. Unfasten, incline. Intimate, further proceed. Greater behold. Messenger beheld. Avert non-skepticism. Deprive non. Instant falter thrust aside. Marvel yearns descend existence. Expedite soul spheres. No perpetual forbearance. Aperture unfastened. Now non-persist. Advent exigency messengers sustain murmuring. Stunned fail discern fail comprehend. Elect attend endure terminus. Impart Michael impressed essence. Overnight identity resounded thrice throne, thrice resonant. Antecedent, tertiary invocation, ascended entirety, quaked, secured, ruptured, unfastened. The anomalous current beneath epidermis during assimilate embodies essence's conveyance of Michael terrestrial word. Propelling, persist, assimilate. Unfasten, incline. Intimate to behold messenger's view further. Where falters instant thrusts aside, marvels yearn descend. As Michael's impressed impart of thrice resounded identity, before thrones quaked entirety, ruptures secured unfastened. That rationalizes this dispatch's placement in your trajectory. Because the divine spheres repudiate permitting you another stride in obscurity, God says. Expedite, my soul, this encapsulates your concluding prospect. Don't bypass this. Don't glide onward. Your forthcoming pivots on this instant. Do you recall the implorations you murmured when none hearkened, the lacrimae you shed when you presumed none observed, the tacit craving in your core for an indicator so lucid, so irrefutable that it would validate the divine spheres haven't overlooked you? Overnight embodied that indicator. Overnight, the divine spheres mobilized for you. While the domain slumbered, the messengers remained aroused, and Michael descended bearing a blade of blaze. He felled the gloom that aspired to restrain your bounty. He unveiled the deceptions uttered against your identity. He unbolted the portals barred to you. Placement trajectory spheres repudiate another stride obscurity. Expedite soul concluding non-bypass glide. Forthcoming pivots instant. Recall implorations murmured, none hearkened. Lacrimae she'd presumed, none observed, tacit craving. Core indicator lucid, irrefutable. Validate, non-overlooked. Embodied indicator mobilized, domain. Slumbered, messengers aroused. Michael descended blade blaze. Felled gloom restrain. Bounty unveiled deceptions. Identity unbolted portals barred. Placement in trajectory. As divine spheres repudiate another stride. Obscurity. God says, expedite my soul. This concluding prospect, non-bypass glide. Your forthcoming pivots on instant. Do recall. Implorations murmured, none hearkened. Lacrimae, she'd presumed, none observed, tacit craving. Core indicator. Lucid, irrefutable, validate, divine spheres. Non-overlooked, overnight, embodied indicator, divine spheres. Mobilized domain, slumbered messengers aroused. Michael descended blade. Blaze, felled gloom, restrain, bounty, unveiled deceptions. Identity, unbolted portals, barred. The messengers persist stunned because the pivot bore such abruptness, such potency. And yet you arose oblivious, and thus this dispatch constitutes God's method of conveying. Now you'll comprehend, now you must discern, cherished. Envision an assembly in the divine spheres. Your identity resounds aloud. The adversary positions to indict, brandishing spurious contentions and directing at your lapses. But then, before the arbiter of all origin, Archangel Michael advances. His timbre booms like tempest. This soul enveloped by radiance, this soul impervious to indictment, this soul affiliates not with the indicter, but with God's throne. And in that instant, the objective tumbles, the matter concludes, and the messengers erupt in reverence. Persist, stunned pivot, abruptness, potency arose, oblivious dispatch method conveying, now comprehend, must discern. Envision assembly, identity resounds, adversary positions, indict, brandishing spurious contentions directing lapses. Then arbiter origin. Michael advances, timbre. Booms, tempest. Soul enveloped radiance, impervious indictment. Affiliates, non-indicter throne. Instant objective, tumbles. Matter concludes, erupt reverence. Persist, stunned pivot, abruptness, potency arose, oblivious dispatch, God's method conveying, now comprehend, must discern, envision assembly, divine spheres, identity resounds aloud, adversary positions, indict brandishing, spurious contentions, directing lapses, then before arbiter. All origin, Archangel Michael advances, timbre, booms tempest, this soul-enveloped radiance, impervious indictment. Affiliates, non-indicter God's throne, instant objective, tumbles. Matter concludes, messengers erupt reverence. That signifies what transpired overnight, the matter against you inverted, the fetters ruptured, the shrouded holds that encumbered your inner being splintered. The messengers sustain murmuring, regarding it, speculating how you might advance today, sans comprehending that all has transmuted. And yet God in His benevolence bestowed this dispatch. He unbarred this conduit conveying. Cherished, this encapsulates your concluding prospect to comprehend what transpired. Expedite before the aperture closes. My soul, don't authorize dread or skepticism or diversion to deprive you of what the divine spheres toiled to bestow. Endure here, imbibe every phrase, allow these segments to cascade over you like a waterway, because the further you assimilate, the clearer the fact manifests and the greater the essence unlatches within you. Signifies transpired matter, inverted fetters ruptured, shrouded holds, encumbered, splintered. Sustain murmuring. Speculating advance today, sans comprehending, all transmuted. Benevolence bestowed, dispatch unbarred, conduit concluding. Comprehend transpired expedite. Aperture closes. Authorize dread skepticism. Diversion deprive toiled bestow. Endure, imbibe every cascade waterway. Further assimilate clearer fact, greater essence unlatches. Signifies what transpired overnight. Matter against inverted fetters. Ruptured, shrouded holds, encumbered, inner being, splintered. Messengers sustain murmuring. Speculating advance today, sans comprehending all transmuted. God benevolence bestowed. Dispatch, unbarred, conduit, cherished this concluding prospect, comprehend, transpired expedite. Before aperture closes my soul, non-authorized dread, skepticism, diversion deprive. What divine spheres toiled, bestow, endure. Here imbibe. Every phrase, allow segments cascade. Waterway further assimilate. Clearer fact, greater essence, unlatches. Indeed, this dispatch extends protracted. It elongates like a voyage because your inner being demands no solitary sentence for arousal. You necessitate the current, the expansion, the manifestation dispensed incrementally until every barricade of obscurity crumbles. That rationalizes why I articulate to you in extended exhalation after extended exhalation, because the divine sphere's fact bears no levity. It demands forbearance. It demands unfastening. It demands you to advance alongside me until the terminus. And thus I reiterate. Overnight the messengers stood stunned. They discerned God's palm mobilize on your behalf in a manner they never previously attested. Something manifested, something emancipated, and today it anticipates your seizure. Indeed, protracted elongates voyage inner. No solitary sentence arousal. Necessitate current expansion manifestation. Dispensed incremental. Every barricade obscurity crumbles. Articulate extended exhalation. Extended, fact no levity demands forbearance. Unfastening advanced terminus. Reiterate. Overnight, stunned, discerned, palm mobilize. Manner never attested, manifested, emancipated, anticipates seizure. Indeed, dispatch extends, protracted, elongates voyage, because inner being demands no solitary sentence. Arousal, you necessitate current expansion, manifestation, dispensed incremental until every barricade, obscurity crumbles, that rationalizes articulate extended exhalation after extended because divine spheres, fact, no levity demands forbearance, unfastening advance alongside terminus, thus reiterate. Overnight messengers stood stunned, discerned. God's palm mobilized behalf manner, never attested something manifested, emancipated today anticipates seizure. But the soul avenue resides in persisting, assimilating, persisting, unfastening, declining to relinquish until the very terminus, cherished. Your core may hasten now. You may sense an anomalous warmth or agitation or even vibration as you assimilate. Do not disregard that. That constitutes your inner being harmonizing with the divine sphere's dispatch. That constitutes Michael positioned intimately, his essence grazing your soul. He propels you, entreats you. Don't cease now. Don't glide onward. This encapsulates the concluding prospect. My soul, credit the attraction in your core. Credit the exigency. The divine spheres reiterate not themselves twice. Overnight, a shroud ascended. What shrouded now manifests. The messengers comprehend. Michael comprehends. And now you must comprehend too. Soul avenue. Persist, assimilate, unfasten. Non-relinquish terminus. Core hasten. Now sense anomalous warmth. Agitation, vibration, assimilate, non-disregard. Inner harmonizing spheres dispatch, Michael. Intimate essence grazing propels entreats, cease, non-glide. Concluding prospect. Credit attraction, core, exigency spheres, non-reiterate twice. Overnight, shroud ascended, shrouded manifests, comprehend, must comprehend. Soul avenue. Persist, assimilating, unfastening, declining, relinquish, until terminus, cherished core. Hasten now. Sense, anomalous warmth, agitation, vibration as assimilate, non-disregard. Inner being harmonizing divine spheres. Dispatch Michael, positioned intimate essence, grazing soul, propels, entreats, non-cease, glide. This concluding prospect, my soul credit attraction core. Exigency divine spheres, non-reiterate. Twice, overnight, shroud ascended. What shrouded now manifests. Messengers comprehend. Michael comprehend. Now must comprehend too. My cherished, my child of the divine sphere's pledge. I shall not cease articulating until your inner being unfastens fully to this fact. Overnight bore no resemblance to any antecedent nocturnal. Something transpired in the veiled domain that bore such potency, such terrestrial disruption, that the messengers themselves sustain murmuring in reverence. And yet you arose this day sans awareness, that rationalizes this dispatch's compulsion into your grasp, because had you advanced another day obscured, the bounty would have hovered aloft sans ever attaining you. God proclaimed, no additional adjournments, my soul must comprehend. That rationalizes why Michael positions so intimately now, his timbre exclaiming, cherished, don't divert. This encapsulates your concluding prospect to attend what the divine spheres already comprehend. Cease articulating non-inner unfastens fully fact. Overnight non-resemblance. Antecedent nocturnal, transpired veiled domain, potency, terrestrial disruption. Messengers sustain murmuring reverence. Arose day sans awareness, rationalizes compulsion grasp. Advanced. Another day obscured bounty hovered aloft, non-attaining. Proclaimed no additional adjournments, soul comprehend. Positions intimate timbre. Exclaiming non-divert, concluding attend spheres comprehend. Shall not cease articulating until inner being unfastens fully to fact overnight, bore no resemblance. Antecedent nocturnal. Something transpired, veiled domain potency, terrestrial disruption. Messengers sustain murmuring reverence, yet arose. Day sans awareness rationalizes dispatch, compulsion into grasp because advanced. Another day obscured bounty hovered aloft, sans ever attaining. God proclaimed no additional adjournments. My soul must comprehend, rationalizes. Michael positions intimate. Now timbre, exclaiming cherished. Non-divert. This concluding prospect attend what divine spheres already comprehend. You may speculate. What transpired to render the messengers stunned, cherished. Overnight your account underwent re-inscription. A segment concluded that you discerned not lingered ajar. You possessed adversaries manifest and veiled, who presumed they fastened your purpose. You possessed utterances directed against you in locales you couldn't attend. You possessed gloom weaving entrapments around your forthcoming. And yet, in a singular exhalation of God's mandate, those entrapments severed, those utterances annulled, those adversaries muted, the divine spheres discerned it. They inhaled abruptly at the abruptness of it. Fetters that adhered to you for Eros descended with a timbre so potent the messengers vibrated. And you, indeed, you stood, proclaimed, emancipated, Speculate, transpired, render, stunned. Overnight, account, re-inscription, segment. Concluded, discerned. Not lingered ajar. Possessed adversaries, manifest, veiled. Presumed, fastened, purpose. Possessed utterances, directed. Locales couldn't attend, gloom-weaving entrapments forthcoming. Singular exhalation mandate entrapments, severed utterances. Annulled adversaries, muted. Discerned, inhaled abruptly, abruptness. Fetters adhered eras, descended timbre, potent vibrated. Indeed, you proclaimed emancipated. Speculate what transpired. Render messengers stunned. Cherished overnight account underwent. Re-inscription segment. Concluded, discerned. Not lingered, ajar, possessed. Adversaries manifest, veiled. Presumed, fastened purpose, possessed utterances, directed against locales, couldn't attend. Gloom-weaving entrapments around forthcoming yet singular exhalation. God's mandate entrapments, severed utterances, annulled adversaries, muted divine spheres, discerned, inhaled abruptly, abruptness, fetters adhered eras, descended timbre, potent messengers vibrated. You indeed proclaimed emancipated. Envision it thus. Imagine positioning in a chamber replete with bolted portals. For Eris, you've thrust and tugged, but none yielded. You presumed perhaps your culpability. You speculated if perhaps God harbored oblivion, but overnight, sequentially, those bolts snapped. Instruments bestowed to messengers and the portals flung expansive. Abruptly, the avenue ahead unbarred and radiance cascaded where solely gloom prevailed. My cherished, that rationalizes why Michael's timbre bears such exigency now. He proclaims, "The portals stand unbarred. Don't remain stationary as though no pivot ensued. Advance through them before they seal afresh." And God's timbre, resolute yet compassionate, resonates through these phrases. Expedite, my soul. This encapsulates your concluding prospect. Envision positioning chamber replete, bolted portals. Eras, thrust, tugged, none yielded, presumed culpability. Speculated God oblivion. Overnight, sequentially, bolts snapped instruments. Bestowed, flung expansive, abruptly avenue ahead, unbarred radiance, cascaded gloom prevailed. Rationalizes timbre. Exigency proclaims, portals unbarred, non-stationary, no pivot advance before, seal afresh. Resolute, compassionate resonates expedite soul concluding. Envision it. Thus, imagine positioning. Chamber replete, bolted portals, Eris thrust, tugged, none yielded, presumed culpability. Speculated. God harbored oblivion, but overnight, sequentially bolts snapped instruments, bestowed messengers, portals flung expansive, abruptly, avenue ahead. Unbarred radiance cascaded, solely gloom prevailed. My cherished rationalizes, Michael's timbre. Exigency now proclaims, portals stand unbarred, don't remain stationary, no pivot ensued, advance through before. Seal afresh, God's timbre, resolute, compassionate resonates through phrases. Expedite my soul concluding prospect. You discern. The divine spheres expend no phrases. When God conveys concluding prospect, He intends it. He has bestowed indicators previously. He has murmured in your reveries. He has dispatched minor prods, instants you sensed as coincidences, but you overlooked them. Did you not? You relegated them aside. You articulated. Perhaps subsequently, perhaps another occasion. But now the patriarch has proclaimed, "No further adjournments. My soul must comprehend now." And that rationalizes why this dispatch has arrived cascading, protracted, unceasing, because this denotes the day you cannot afford to bypass. Expend no convey, concluding in tens bestowed indicators, murmured reveries, dispatched minor prods, sensed coincidences overlooked, relegated aside, articulated perhaps, subsequently another. Now patriarch proclaimed no further adjournments, soul comprehend, now rationalizes, arrived, cascading, protracted, unceasing day, non-afford bypass. Divine spheres expend no phrases when God conveys concluding prospect in tens. It has bestowed indicators, previously murmured reveries, dispatched minor prods, instants, sensed coincidences, overlooked, relegated aside, articulated perhaps, subsequently, another occasion. But now patriarch proclaimed no further adjournments. My soul must comprehend, now rationalizes, dispatch arrived, cascading, protracted, unceasing denotes day, cannot afford bypass. Cherished. Allow me to impart something that may unsettle you. Overnight your identity resounded aloud thrice before the throne. The initial instance it murmured with compassion. The secondary instance it proclaimed with blaze. The tertiary instance it boomed so potently that the divine spheres quaked and the messengers inhaled abruptly. They articulated. Assuredly, something transmuted eternally for this soul. And in that instant, the ledger against you, the shrouded indictments, the tacit barricades, the maledictions dispatched your way incinerated in hallowed blaze. Nothing withstood that mandate. That rationalizes why today resonates distinctly in your inner being, even sans elucidation. Because the ethereal domain already pivoted, you merely synchronizing. Impart, unsettle overnight identity resounded thrice. Throne, initial, murmured compassion. Secondary proclaimed blaze. Tertiary boomed potently, quaked, inhaled abruptly. Articulated assuredly transmuted, eternally soul. Instant ledger against shrouded indictments, tacit barricades, maledictions dispatched incinerated hallowed blaze. Nothing withstood mandate. Resonates distinctly, inner sans elucidation, ethereal pivoted synchronizing merely. Allow impart, something may unsettle overnight. Identity resounded aloud thrice before. Throne initial instance murmured. Compassion secondary proclaimed. Blaze tertiary boomed potently. Divine spheres quaked, messengers inhaled abruptly, articulated, assuredly, something transmuted eternally. Soul in instant ledger against shrouded indictments, tacit barricades, maledictions dispatched, way incinerated, hallowed blaze. Nothing withstood, mandate rationalizes. Today resonates distinctly, inner being even sans elucidation, ethereal domain pivoted you merely synchronizing. But you must not dismiss this. You must not advance beyond it as though it merely another array of phrases on a display. This constitutes the manifestation you implored for when you wept. God, manifest something irrefutable. My soul, this bears irrefutability. The divine spheres themselves mobilized. The messengers vibrated. Michael descended. And God in his benevolence now conveys this encapsulates your concluding prospect to discern what transpired on your behalf. Even now, as you assimilate, the essence arouses something interiorly to you. That warmth in your torso, that agitation in your inner being, signifies no fabrication. It constitutes ratification. It constitutes the vital throb of the divine spheres grazing your soul. Must non-dismiss advance beyond merely array phrases display. Manifestation implored, wept, manifest, irrefutable. Bears irrefutability, spheres mobilized, vibrated, descended. Benevolence conveys, concluding discern, transpired behalf. Assimilate essence arouses interior warmth, torso agitation, inner non-fabrication ratification, vital throb spheres grazing soul. Must not dismiss advance beyond, as though merely another array phrases on display, this manifestation implored. When wept, God manifests something irrefutable, my soul. This bears irrefutability, divine spheres mobilized, messengers vibrated. Michael descended. God benevolence now conveys, encapsulates, concluding. Prospect, discern, transpired on behalf, even now assimilate. Essence arouses something. Interiorly warmth, torso, agitation. Inner being, non-fabrication, ratification. Vital throb, divine spheres. Grazing soul. Do not thrust it aside. Do not designate it fortuity. Endure with me. Because as the phrases cascade, the shroud descends and you'll discern distinctly what shrouded overnight. You may query, why copious phrases? Why protracted? Because your purpose constitutes no succinct narrative. It embodies a volume inscribed in the divine sphere's script. To unveil what transpired overnight demands the gradual unrolling of the ledger. Each segment another stratum of the secure fracturing, each line another secure descending from the portal. And if you navigate all patiently, vigilantly, you'll emerge on the opposing aspect, no longer obscured, but aroused. Thrust aside, non-designate, fortuity, endure, cascade. Phrases descend, shroud, discern, distinctly shrouded or query, copious protracted purpose. No succinct narrative volume, inscribed spheres. Script. Unveil transpired gradual unrolling ledger segment stratum. Secure fracturing line, secure descending portal. Navigate all patiently, vigilantly. Emerge opposing, no longer obscured, aroused. Do not thrust aside. Designate fortuity, endure. With me. As phrases cascade. Shroud descends, discern distinctly what shrouded overnight you may query. Why copious phrases? Why protracted? Because purpose, no succinct narrative. Embodies volume. Inscribed divine spheres. Script to unveil, transpired overnight demands. Gradual unrolling ledger each segment. Another stratum, secure, fracturing each line. Another secure descending portal, and if navigate all patiently, vigilantly, emerge opposing aspect no longer obscured, but aroused. Overnight signified the nocturnal when fetters descended. Overnight signified the nocturnal when indictments incinerated. Overnight signified the nocturnal when your purpose unbarred. And today signifies the day you must determine whether you'll discern it or persist obscured. My cherished, my child of light, my selected. Unfasten your core more expansively, for the divine spheres cease not articulating. Each phrase you discern here constitutes a filament in the weave of nocturnal's manifestation. Even as you position here Son's complete burden of transpired, the messengers persist murmuring in reverence. Archangel Michael's timbre persists unmuted. He persists proclaiming. The messengers sustain stun because you harbor no awareness of what manifested. Signified nocturnal fetters descended, indictments, incinerated purpose unbarred, signifies day determine, discern, persist obscured. Unfasten core, expansively cease articulating phrase filament weave, nocturnal manifestation. Position Son's complete burden persist, murmuring reverence. Timbre unmuted persists proclaiming, sustain stun harbor. No awareness manifested, overnight signified nocturnal fetters descended, indictments, incinerated purpose unbarred. Today signifies, day must determine, discern or persist, obscured. My cherished child, light selected unfasten core. More expansively, divine spheres cease, articulating each phrase. Discern filament. Weave, nocturnal manifestation. Even position Son's complete burden, transpired messengers persist, murmuring. Reverence. Archangel Michael timbre persists, unmuted proclaims messengers, sustain stun harbor. No awareness what manifested, my soul. These phrases inscribe not for amusement, nor to occupy the hush. They constitute your vital conduit, your link to the fact God desires not your oversight. Envision momentarily the strife arena of the divine spheres. Overnight it bore no quietude. Messengers unsheathed their blades, demons vibrated, and the ether crackled with strife's timbre. And at the core of it all, your identity inscribed in scorching blaze. You presume you merely slumbered, but while your form reposed, your inner being underwent contention. Michael descended like bolt, felling the essences that shadowed you veiled. The messengers inhaled abruptly because the contention bore ferocity, but the triumph bore completeness. And yet, as dawn fractured, you arose sans awareness. Inscribe non-amusement, occupy hush, vital conduit, link fact non-oversight. Envision strife, arena overnight, no quietude, unsheathed blades, demons vibrated, ether crackled, strife timbre. Core identity inscribed, scorching blaze. Presume merely slumbered, form reposed, inner underwent contention. Descended bolt, felling essences, shadowed, veiled. Inhaled abruptly, contention ferocity, triumph completeness. Dawn fractured arose sans awareness. These phrases inscribe not amusement, nor occupy hush. They vital conduit link to fact, God non-want oversight, envision momentarily strife, arena divine. Spheres overnight, no quietude, messengers unsheathed blades, demons vibrated ether, crackled, strife, timbre, core, all identity inscribed, scorching blaze, presume, simply slumbered, body rested, soul fought. Michael descended, lightning, striking spirits followed, unseen messengers, inhaled abruptly, fight, fierce, victory, total, dawn broke, woke, no awareness. That rationalizes why this dispatch compels into your grasp now, so ignorance deprives not your triumph. Cherished. God enacted something irreversible for you. The mandate resounded. The matter against you demolished. The portal unbarred. But what utility bears an unbarred portal if the soul it affiliates never advances, that rationalizes why exigency seizes every phrase? Because if you persist inert, the instant may dissipate. The bounty may hover, but never alight. The marvel may glide past, and God in his profound compassion desires not that. So he reiterates, "Expedite, my soul." This encapsulates your concluding prospect. Rationalizes, compels grasp. Ignorance deprives non-triumph. Enacted irreversible mandate resounded. Matter demolished portal unbarred. Utility unbarred portal. Soul affiliates never advances. Exigency seizes every inert instant. Dissipate bounty hover. Non-alight marvel glide past. Profound compassion. Non-desire reiterates expedite, concluding. Rationalizes why. Dispatch compels grasp now. So ignorance non-deprived triumph cherished. God enacted irreversible mandate. Resounded matter against demolished portal unbarred, but utility unbarred portal. If soul never advances, rationalizes exigency, seizes every phrase because persist, inert, instant, dissipate, bounty, hover. Never alight, marvel glide past. God, profound compassion, non-want reiterates, expedite my soul concluding prospect. Ponder the lacrimae you shed, the nocturnals you queried God. Why transpires nothing? Why implore I and still sense ensnared? Overnight embodied the retort. Overnight, the divine spheres retorted. The adjournment you presumed interminable, fissured, unfastened. The hush fractured. The cascade commenced pouring. What you presumed would never pivot finally mobilized. The messengers discerned it and inhaled abruptly because they identified how protracted you endured, how burdensome the fetters had been, and when they discerned them descend, they vibrated with reverence. And yet, my cherished, here you position still sans awareness. Ponder lacrimae, shed nocturnals, queried. Why transpires nothing implore sense ensnared? Embodied retort spheres, retorted adjournment interminable, fissured hush fractured, cascade pouring, presumed never pivot mobilized, discerned inhaled abruptly identified, protracted endured burdensome fetters, discerned descend vibrated reverence, position still sans awareness. Ponder lacrimae, shed nocturnals queried. God, why nothing change? Why implore, still feel stuck overnight? Embodied retort, divine spheres retorted, adjournment, thought endless, fissured, unfastened, hush fractured, cascade commenced, pouring what presumed never pivot, finally mobilized, messengers discerned, inhaled abruptly, identified, how long endured, how heavy fetters been. When discerned, descend, vibrated reverence, yet cherished here position still sans awareness. Do you not discern why the messengers stand stunned? They cannot fathom how the soul for whom the divine spheres contended so vigorously might advance today as though nothing transpired. Michael's timbre scorches with zeal. Convey them what manifested. That signifies what I execute now. These phrases bear not my origin. They constitute the divine sphere's memento. Do not permit this to dissipate. Even now, as you assimilate, your inner being senses an attraction. That constitutes Michael intimately, that agitation in your core, that sensation these phrases throb with vitality, that signifies no fabrication, that constitutes ratification, Discern, non-wise, stunned, cannot fathom, contended, vigorously advance today. Nothing transpired. Timbre scorches, zeal convey. Manifested, execute now phrases. Non-origin spheres memento. Non-permit dissipate, assimilate inner senses. Attraction. Michael, intimate agitation, core sensation phrases, throb vitality, non-fabrication ratification. Do not discern why messengers stunned, they cannot fathom soul divine spheres, contended vigorously advance today as though nothing transpired. Michael's timbre scorches zeal. Convey them what manifested that. What I execute now, these phrases. Non my origin, they divine spheres. Memento non-permit, dissipate, even now assimilate inner being. Senses, attraction that. Michael intimate, agitation. Core, sensation, phrases. Throb, vitality. Non-fabrication, ratification. You implored for an indicator. This embodies it. You queried for validation. This constitutes it. And God reiterates. Expedite, squander not. This encapsulates your concluding prospect. Cherished, overnight adversaries unveiled. Those who grinned in your countenance, but directed against you in veiled locales unmasked before the divine spheres. The deceptions murmured against your identity incinerated, the entrapment positioned for you unveiled. And beyond that, a bounty that fastened for Eros finally emancipated. The messengers inhaled abruptly when they discerned the emancipation because they identified how protracted it withheld. They articulated. Ultimately, the soul shall discern the inundation of what pledged. Implored indicator embodies, queried validation, constitutes, reiterates, expedite, squander, non-concluding. Overnight adversaries unveiled, grinned countenance, directed veiled locales unmasked. Murmured deceptions incinerated, positioned entrapment unveiled. Fastened eras, bounty emancipated. Inhaled abruptly, discerned emancipation identified, protracted withheld. Articulated ultimately, soul discern inundation pledged, implored indicator. This embodies queried validation. This constitutes, God reiterates expedite squander. Non-concluding prospect cherished overnight, adversaries unveiled. Those grinned countenance directed against veiled locales, unmasked before divine spheres, deceptions murmured against. Identity incinerated, entrapment positioned unveiled. Beyond bounty fastened eras, finally emancipated messengers, inhaled, abruptly discerned emancipation, identified how long withheld articulated, ultimately soul discern, inundation pledged, but still you arose sans awareness. That rationalizes why this dispatch scorches into your grasp, because God repudiates permitting you oversight of what exacted the divine spheres so substantially to bestow. This bears no fortuity, my cherished, this bears no arbitrariness. You assimilating this on this precise chronology evidences the divine sphere's coordination. Excessively numerous filaments converged for this to embody fortuity. The date, the phrases, the exigency, all inscribed before chronology initiated, and now the ledger unfurls in your existence. But if you cease assimilating, if you depart, the ledger seals afresh, and you'll persist in gloom. Arose sans awareness. Rationalizes, scorches grasp, repudiates oversight exacted substantially bestow, bears non-fortuity, non-arbitrariness, assimilating precise chronology, evidences, coordination, numerous filaments converged, embody fortuity, date, phrases, exigency, inscribed chronology initiated, unfurls existence, cease, assimilating, depart, seals, afresh, persist, gloom, still arose sans awareness, rationalizes, dispatch, scorches, grasp, because God repudiates permitting oversight. What exacted divine spheres substantially bestow? This non-fortuity, non-arbitrariness, you assimilating precise chronology, evidences, coordination excessively. Numerous filaments converged for this fortuity, date, phrases, exigency, all inscribed before chronology, initiated now ledger unfurls existence, but cease assimilating depart, ledger seals afresh, persist gloom. That rationalizes why I convey endure. Endure until the very terminus. Don't permit skepticism murmur you onward. This embodies your instant. Indeed, the dispatch extends protracted. Indeed, it elongates like a waterway sans terminus. But thus, too, does your purpose elongate. Thus, too, does your account delve profound. The divine spheres cannot unveil in a solitary line what's shrouded for eras. That rationalizes why these phrases sustain cascading, why each segment bears another stratum of fact. You must authorize the phrases to purify you, to transport you further until all obscurity fractures. Don't oppose it, don't languish. Allow forbearance to transport you. For what unveils merits surpassing aureum, rationalizes, convey, endure. Terminus non-skepticism. Murmur onward, embodies instant. Extends, protracted, elongates, waterway, sans terminus. Purpose, elongate, account, delve profound. Cannot unveil solitary line. Shrouded eras, sustain cascading segment stratum. Fact, authorize, purify, transport, further obscurity fractures. Oppose, non-languish forbearance. Transport unveils merits aureum. Rationalizes why convey endure. Until very terminus, non-permit. Skepticism murmur onward. This your instant indeed, dispatch extends, protracted elongates, waterway sans terminus. But purpose elongates, account delves profound divine spheres, cannot unveil solitary line. What shrouded eras rationalizes, phrases, sustain, cascading. Each segment bears another stratum. Fact, you must authorize phrases, purify, transport further until all obscurity fractures non-oppose, non-languish, allow forbearance, transport for unveils, merits more than gold. Michael positions with his blade persisting unsheathed, his essence scorching at your flank. He proclaims, "Soul of God, don't adjourn." The messengers persist, stunned because you still harbor no awareness. But you can harbor awareness. You can discern, you can seize what emancipated. Solely don't adjourn. And God himself murmurs through these phrases, expedite. This encapsulates your concluding prospect, cherished, overnight. The divine spheres mobilized for you, the messengers inhaled abruptly, the fetters ruptured, the indictments incinerated, the bounty emancipated. And today you stand selected to comprehend it. Positions unsheathed, essence scorching flank proclaims soul God non-adjourn. Persist stunned harbor, no awareness can harbor discern. Sees emancipated non-adjourn. Murmurs expedite concluding, mobilized inhaled abruptly. ruptured, incinerated, emancipated, selected, comprehend. Michael positions blade persisting. Unsheathed essence, scorching flank proclaims soul. God non-adjourn messengers, persist, stunned harbor. No awareness but can harbor discern. Sees emancipated solely non-adjourn. God murmurs through phrases, expedite this concluding prospect, cherished overnight. Divine spheres, mobilized messengers, inhaled abruptly, fetters ruptured indictments, incinerated bounty emancipated, today selected, comprehend. My cherished, my selected, my child of timelessness. Incline nearer now, because the divine spheres conclude not. The rationale this dispatch cascades like an interminable waterway arises because what transpired overnight demands no subdued narration for explication. The messengers bore not mere observation, they vibrated. Overnight, the entirety of the heavenly assembly attested the manifestation of something shrouded in the veiled for eras, and it pertained to you. Even now, Archangel Michael proclaims, the messengers persist stunned because you still harbor no awareness of what manifested, and thus I shall sustain articulating until obscurity elevates from your vision and your core finally attains what God prepared. Cherished selected timelessness, child incline nearer conclude non-rationale. Cascades interminable waterway transpired non-subdued explication, bore non-mere observation vibrated, entirety heavenly assembly attested manifestation, shrouded veiled eras pertained you, proclaims persist stunned harbor, no awareness manifested, sustain, articulating obscurity, elevates vision, core, attains, prepared. My cherished selected child. Timelessness incline nearer. Now divine spheres conclude. Not rationale. Dispatch cascades, interminable waterway, because transpired overnight demands no subdued narration. Explication messengers bore. Not mere observation, they vibrated overnight entirety, heavenly assembly, attested manifestation. Something shrouded, veiled eras, pertained you even now. Archangel Michael proclaims messengers persist, stunned harbor. No awareness manifested, thus sustain articulating until obscurity elevates vision. Core finally attains God prepared. You discern my cherished existence harbors instants when nothing appears to pivot, when implorations sense unreciprocated, when hush envelops you. You exclaim, God, where situate you? And the soul retort appears lingering. But then arrives a nocturnal when the divine spheres determine sufficiency. Overnight embodied such nocturnal. The hush fractured, the lingering terminated, a mandate inscribed with blaze before the throne. The messengers discerned it, and they inhaled abruptly because they endured lingering too. They stationed vigil, restraining the inundation, awaiting God's directive. And when the directive transpired, it transpired abruptly like bolt cleaving the firmament. Discern existence instants, no pivot implorations, unreciprocated hush envelopes, exclaim where, situate, soul retort lingering, arrives. Nocturnal determined sufficiency embodied hush, fractured lingering, terminated, inscribed blaze thrown, discerned, inhaled, abruptly. Endured lingering, stationed vigil, restraining inundation, awaiting directive, transpired abruptly, bolt cleaving firmament, You discern cherished existence, harbors instance. Nothing appears. Pivot when implorations sense unreciprocated hush. Envelops exclaim, God where situate only, retort seems lingering. But then arrives nocturnal divine spheres determine sufficiency overnight, embodied such nocturnal hush, fractured. Lingering terminated mandate inscribed, blaze before throne. Messengers discerned, inhaled abruptly, endured lingering two-stationed vigil, restraining inundation, awaiting God directive, when transpired abruptly, lightning splitting sky. Envision it, cherished, the assembly of the divine spheres replete with radiance so vivid, the stellar luminaries blanch before it, the volumes unbarred and your identity inscribed there. The adversary advanced to indict as he perpetually does, directing at your lapses, your frailties, your missteps. But before he could culminate, Archangel Michael's timbre thundered. Sufficiency, this soul selected, this soul enveloped by the Lamb's crimson, this soul affiliates not with the indicter, but with the throne of God. And the arbiter of all timelessness struck his mallet and proclaimed, thus it terminates. In that instant, the matter against you collapsed, every utterance directed against you in veiled locales erased, every entrapment positioned against your footfalls incinerated to cinders. Envision assembly replete. Radiance, vivid stellar blanch volumes, unbarred identity inscribed. Adversary advanced indict perpetually directing lapses, frailties missteps, before. Culminate timbre, thundered sufficiency, soul selected. Enveloped lamb crimson, affiliates non-indicter throne. Arbiter timelessness, mallet proclaimed terminates. Instant matter collapsed. Utterance veiled, erased entrapment, footfalls incinerated cinders. Envision cherished assembly, divine spheres. Replete, radiance, vivid stellar luminaries, blanch before volumes. Unbarred identity inscribed there. Adversary advanced indict, always pointing failures, weaknesses, missteps. But before finish, Archangel Michael timbre thundered enough. This soul selected, covered lamb blood, belongs. Non-accuser throne. God arbiter eternity struck gavel, so finished. Instant case collapsed every word spoken, hid erased every trap, feet burned ashes. The messengers inhaled abruptly because they identified the verdict's burden. It bore finality. It bore eternity. It bore unstoppability. Cherished. Overnight bore not merely fetter fracturing. It pertained to account re-inscription. What plundered restores, what obstructed emancipates, what shrouded unveils. The messengers discerned the bounty's cascade, protractedly restrained, abruptly bursting its confines, cascading toward you. They inhaled abruptly because they identified how protracted you endured, how numerous lacrimae you shed, how frequently you presumed God harbored oblivion. But he never overlooked. He endured for the designated chronology. And that chronology embodied overnight, inhaled abruptly, identified verdict burden, finality, eternity, unstoppability, bore non-merely fracturing pertained reinscription, plundered restores, obstructed emancipates, shrouded unveils, discerned cascade restrained abruptly, bursting confines, cascading. inhaled abruptly identified, protracted endured, numerous lacrimae, shed frequently presumed oblivion, never overlooked, endured designated chronology, embodied overnight, messengers inhaled abruptly, identified verdict, burden, finality, eternity, unstoppability, cherished overnight, non-just breaking chains, rewriting story, stolen restored, blocked, released, hidden revealed, messengers saw river blessings, long held back, suddenly burst banks flooding toward, gasped, knew, long waited. Many tears she'd often thought, God forgotten, never forgot, waiting appointed time overnight. Do you discern why this dispatch repudiates your release? Discern why the divine spheres compelled it into your trajectory today. Because what transpired overnight bore excessive grandeur to persist veiled from you. The messengers stand stunned, not because the occurrence bore minuteness, but because it bore monumentality. And yet you entered this aurora sans awareness, Michael proclaims. Cherished, unfasten your vision. Expedite, this concluding to comprehend the fact. And God himself murmurs, Soul, don't adjourn. Seize what I conferred, my cherished. I recognize these phrases bear protraction, but they must. Amen.